Hey, welcome. Come on in. Jeannie Lynch, thank you for checking in today. We're going to be looking at life activation, another beautiful spiritual modality to help you heal. Can't wait to share Charles Logan with you. He's from the Logan Light Center. So stay listening and stay watching. That fun interactive interview is coming up next. Charlie, yay! So happy you're here today, and we met a couple months ago in Venice, and you are one of the few people that I know, because we've been stuck in our houses for 2 years, getting out of COVID, right? You're a healer and you have a whole healing center, and we met right away. We were interested in doing more collaborations together. So today's the day. I'm so happy you're here. So whether people are listening to this on our podcast or following us in HD color, we appreciate the audience. So today we're going to continue the beautiful spiritual modalities and spiritual stories. You're going to fit on two beautiful playlists. So I'm interested to get to know you better. I'm going to make a friend, I'm sure, today. And I would love my audience to know more about how you serve the world, especially now. So I'm going to get quiet. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about you and how you became a healer.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And where to start? Gosh, how I became a healer. Mostly, I was a wreck and I needed to heal myself. And then over the course of doing that, I came across things that worked so well and changed my life so powerfully and so transformatively that I couldn't keep it to myself. I wanted to be able to help others because I knew other people that were in similar situations that had similar issues or were just, having trouble in their lives that I knew personally, that I was like, oh, well, if this helped me in this way, then I hope that it can help you. And so that's when I wanted to be able to share it. So
I love that. And I've been doing these interviews for a while, and I have yet to meet a healer that didn't need to be healed when they started their own spiritual journey. So,
well, yeah, of course.
just a quick question too. I'm kind of curious, like, what do you consider the first modality that opened up the door to your spirituality? And then I'll share mine with you because I think it's a great way to start this video.
Well, so the first couple of years of my spiritual path that started pulling me out of things were very kind of simple. I don't mean simple, but gentle and things that we can find fairly regularly, like some crystal healing, some Reiki, some things like that. But the turning point, the thing that really started the transformative process that really took me from there to there was something called a life activation, which is hopefully I'm going to be doing some more talking about today because it's a fairly life-changing healing.
I love that. So I think my first modality, literally in grief, was I couldn't sleep, and my practitioner was like, "Have you tried meditation?" I'm like, so for a year or 2 years, I just fell asleep with Anadora Judith's meditations turning on, and I had no idea. And then I ended up like teaching classes years later, but that was my first door opener. So I love that. So
well, and that was mine. The initial process, and it's so interesting that you say that. I was living with an ex, and we'd had a big fight, and I found myself sleeping in a room by myself for the first time, and I was very upset and emotionally keyed up. And I just started looking online for something to watch that I could just watch and numb my mind so I could go to sleep. And I ended up landing on a YouTube channel that had all kinds of little small videos about meditation and spirituality and crystals and quantum fields and alternate realities. And, you name it, there was a 10-minute video on it. And that started me on this process of finding, remembering that there was something more that I was interested in and looking for, and reconnecting me with that. And meditation would have been then my next step after that. I started falling asleep, either with like binaural beats in my headphones or listening to a guided meditation or something. That was definitely my gateway to further things.
Another level too, that opening the door. Really, when I first started going online and looking at this stuff, I had to go back 2004, 2005. There wasn't really one place to go. There was 1,000 places to go. And I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know what direction. My back books will show you just how ADD I was when I first started my spiritual journey. And I think to your point too, you've come so far into all these different modalities. We're still learning, we're still adding to our toolbox. So that's a good segue into the different things today, because when we were talking, you said, Jeannie, I do so many different things. And I said, well, I cover Reiki, I've covered meditation, breath work. Let's get to the things that are different. So my audience can go, what the hell were they saying, and learn something. And I want to educate people today. So take us to some of your modalities that are different or that you'd like to offer today.
Sure. Well, the first one that I, definitely want to touch on is the one I already mentioned. It's called the life activation.
Okay.
Because I jokingly say, but this is also not a joke, when I talk to clients, there are, something like 17 to 20 different modalities that I work in at this point. And most of them are ones that, you would come to me and say, oh, I'm wanting to work on this, or I'm wanting to heal that. And I would say, oh, well, if that's the case, then this is going to be the right healing to help with that. And we would diagnose, so to speak, according to what the symptom is.
Yeah.
Whereas for the life activation, the symptom that would cause me to diagnose a life activation is if you are standing and breathing.
Okay, everybody can use this modality.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's dive into it. Tell me more about it. You meet me on the street. You want me to come into your facility to do a healing. Sell it to me. I would love to.
All right, here's the pitch.
Yep.
So the life activation is an ancient modality that is handed down through the lineage of King Solomon. In King Solomon's time, one of his biggest missions that he had was to help humans evolve into what he would refer to as the Adam Kadmon, or the highest God version and divine being that we're capable of becoming. And in that process of searching for that, he gathered priests and priestesses and shamans and medicine men and women and mystics and wizards, everybody in the world that would have had anything to do with energy, spirituality, and healing. He put out a call to the entire world, gathered them all into his temple, and started experimenting to find out what worked. In the process of that, he ended up also finding many other modalities that did other things that the one stipulation that everything had to have was that it was universal, that it worked on all people all the time. So if it only worked, in this part of the world for these people under a full moon, then they would say, that's wonderful and powerful, but that's not what we're looking for. No, thank you.
Got it.
But if the person could come in and perform the healing, then have it be successful, and then repeat the process and have it continue to be successful. Then if they could teach it to someone else who could then repeat the process. And if any of this sounds like the scientific method, it's because it is. Then if they could prove that this worked and they could teach to others and have the same results be achieved, then they would incorporate it into the lineage. And then over the course of that, they also, developed the main goal, which was the life activation. And it involves filling you with light down to your genetic level. So we're actually lighting up your DNA when we do this.
So how do you do that? Is there a light involved, or is it energy work? So I'm so interested.
So there are two main parts to the healing. The first half is a series of mini healings that go in and balance and align all of your different energetic structures, your magnetic energies, your etheric energy, your elemental energies. We work on your aura, we align your central core, we check your crown cap. There's a whole energy service protocol is the actual name for it. And all of that is really just preparing you to receive the activation so that you're in a really open, receptive place. There are also a lot of benefits that part of it has in and of itself, and there's a lot of healing that comes from that process. But ultimately, it's kind of preparing you for the activation.
Is that process like 20 minutes in the process, or is there 10 sessions to do that? And what's the timeline for that part?
So the whole life activation is one session that takes about an hour to an hour and a half usually. Okay. I like to schedule 2 hours so there's time to chat before and after. But
yeah,
it's really only about an hour and a half session.
Can it be done virtually?
What's that?
Can it be done virtually, or is this something?
Unfortunately not. It's an in-person thing, and the reason is because when we get to part 2 in the actual activation itself, that's done with a specific tool. It's actually a wand that is created just for the purposes of doing life activations.
Okay.
And it's a fairly cool story. There are, I think, 4 wand makers in the world that make wands for life activations. And when someone sets the intention and commits to going to learn how to become a life activation practitioner, the wand makers visit the person on the astral and then create the wand accordingly.
Are you kidding?
Yeah,
That is
it's very
fascinating.
Harry Potter-y and
I
very cool.
love it.
Yeah.
Now, how long? I love that you're so passionate about it, and I love learning something new. So there's something I don't know, and I love that. Take me to how the door got open for you. Were you somewhere doing a healing, and someone gave this modality to you, and you were intrigued, or did you find it online, or how does someone else, like if someone else wanted to learn more about this, where would
Right.
you recommend they go?
Well, the King Solomon lineage right now is housed in a company called the Modern Mystery School.
Okay.
And the Modern Mystery School is one of the 7 ancient lineages on the planet, 6 of which are around but not fully open to the public, whereas the 7th, which is this lineage, has opened its doors to the public 20 years ago.
Hold on one second. I think we need to change your sound. Hey, thanks for watching today's video. And I'm also really excited to tell you, you might not know this, my content can also be found where you listen to podcasts. So Apple, Anchor, Spotify, Pandora. Check me out here under the name The Intuitive Mindset Podcast with Jeannie Lynch. Let's get back to the video.
And then on my website as well, there's links to the Mystery School websites, and everything I do is kind of connected to that. So
Perfect. Well, we'll definitely
there's lots of
tag
options
that.
for being able to find it. How I found it, though, is a little bit of one of those fun stories where the universe had to kind of jump through quite a few hoops to get me into the right time and place so that I was able to be exposed to it or introduced to it. I, at that point on my journey, had been doing some healing work. I had gotten my first 2 Reiki attunements, which I really just did because I read online somewhere that it connected you better with your spirit guides, and I was desperate for guidance at this point, like because I was just a mess. And also, mind you, that I feel like it's important to note, most people who knew me would have had no idea that I was the wreck that I was.
Say that again.
I
Say that again. I want to hear that again.
Most people who knew me would have had no idea that I was in the state that I was and that I was the wreck that I was internally. Because one of my gifts and talents, especially as an actor and a performer, is that I can present like everything's perfectly fine without even trying. Like, this is a very natural instinct for me.
Oh, I love that. Let's take a pause on that too, with so many people out there, especially where we are in the world today. We've really had to get in touch with that and then face that and allow ourselves to be seen in that way, right? So I love what you just said, because I know from my own experience of having to go back into work after I lost my daughter, I said I could put my smile, I could do what I needed to do to get through the day, and then I would lose it going home. So you got to this wreck place, right, as you're describing, and people wouldn't have known that. I just did another interview 2 weeks ago from another woman who was like, she went to the place where she was going to kill herself, and no one knew she was in a bad place. And she talked about the same
That's
thing. So
yeah.
I'm glad we're bringing some awareness to that. So,
And,
okay, keep going. I love
no,
your story. Thank
and
you for sharing that.
and that's where I was. I'm very grateful for my family, because my little brother had been in an accident and we almost lost him, and I saw and experienced firsthand what it was like to lose a sibling, because we're very close. um, and I'm very grateful for that moment, because in the times where I would have considered taking my own life, which is where I was at this point,
Yeah,
the one thing that never got me to the point of being able to try that was that I just vowed that I would never put my family through that again.
that's
So
mindfulness.
that
Yeah,
helped a lot. But then it also, at this point, my one, I will say, successful coping mechanism, but it's not successful at all, was alcohol. And I was
got
also
it.
just one bender away from wrapping my car around a tree and not surviving. Um,
How old are you now in your
so
healing? Take us to the time frame. So, were you already a healer at this point,
I
practicing
was
modalities?
already I was already a healer. I had
Okay.
already found the path, and so I I had caught myself on this really steep spiral, and I had started to do things that lessened the steepness of the
Right.
spiral,
Good word.
but it was still downhill. Like I still was not on an uphill curve yet, and I wasn't finding the things to get me over that hump so that I was improving rather than just slowing the degradation.
Got it.
Um, and so this is the place where I was. And I'm sorry, one other kind of key aspect of this for me was that I was doing the healing work, and once I had the tools to work on myself, then I also felt the desire to work and help with others, like I talked
Got it.
about before. But in this case, I was at the point where I tried a few different modalities, and I had studied some different things, and I was searching for stuff because when I was doing the healing work, I was very aware of the fact that I had this feeling in my heart of what was possible with energy healing, and then I saw what my results were. And there was this really big disconnect between the two, and I was searching for something to close that gap, and I wasn't able to find it. In the curtain speech before the show, the director of the theater and the director of the show was making the announcements and talked about this healer who was in the audience who had done all of this work to fix laryngitis and a broken ankle in the lead in the show the season before, and this amazing person named Barbara who was in the audience, and and just to say hi and welcome her. And after the show, I went up to them and said, "Hey, I didn't know you guys were into that kind of thing. I'm into that kind of thing. Who's
Yeah.
this Barbara? She sounds awesome. I want to meet her." And that's when they finally said, "Hey, you talked about meeting Barbara. She's going to be at the show tonight. Why don't you hang out afterwards and introduce yourself?" So I did, and we set up a time to meet a couple days later. And I went into her center down in Naples, and I think I got in there at like 1 o'clock. And the next thing I knew, I looked at my phone, and it was 5:30, and I said, "Oh my God, I have to go. I have a show tonight."
Oh my gosh. On a show day. Oh my gosh.
Um, but that was when she told me about the life activation and the mystery school and the King Solomon lineage and all of these things, which at that point I had read about mystery schools. I had read about the Egyptian mystery schools and the Greek and all these different things, but I thought that was something that was gone from our planet. I didn't think they were around anymore. And I was always a little sad in my heart that I had missed out on that opportunity. But here was this wonderful woman that I had this wonderful connection with that we chatted for hours, telling me that no, in fact, they are still around, and not only are they still around, but I can train with them.
Well, let's just acknowledge that what you're doing today is lighting that light for others to go, what is this? Kind of like you did that inquiry with this woman,
Yeah,
Barbara, right? So I love what that we're spreading that light. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of practitioners all around the world. Like I could say human design. Do you know what human design is?
a little bit. Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
mean, I
like
know of it, and I've done my chart on it and things like that.
okay, yeah.
I don't know a lot about it.
If you went out today, someone, I'm throwing this out to the audience then, human design, you're like, what is that? Go and Google it. It's everywhere. You know what I mean? You can, once you open up the door, my sense is about this modality that we're highlighting today is that that's a very small aspect of people that have that. And so they've really, it sounds like they've really protected the integrity of the modality. Would you say that's it? Or are they trying to change anything? Take me there. They want more
Both.
people to use this?
Both are true.
Okay.
So we are open to the public now, and we are growing. I believe we have representation in something like 55 different countries now. And there are a lot more practitioners now. I mean, if you look on the website, you can find practitioner. There's a place where you can go to find a practitioner near you.
So,
Um,
question for you then, are you still a student of it because
I
are
am.
you still learning and you're still working with it and it's never ending?
Yeah.
And can anyone connect with you to learn more?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a lot of healings that we teach in the lineage that you can just come in and receive. But if you actually want to, study and learn and train and be able to do more in that aspect, then then you can actually come in and become an initiate in the lineage and start studying and training. There are some classes you can take without becoming an initiate. But if you want to get to the higher stuff, the good stuff, then you need to initiate and start that process.
So I'll put this
But
out to you right, without you knowing. We were going to do, my whole spiritual group got canceled again this year because of COVID, because we couldn't meet in person. So we're waiting to get back together. And what we want to do this year is go to all the different healing centers and modalities around and
Wow.
come in for a night. You know what I mean? Like, show us what you got, show us what you're doing. So, would you be interested once we open the doors into hosting 25 to 30 women?
Oh, yeah, by all means.
Okay.
Hopefully by the time that happens, right now we are working on moving into a larger commercial space that will be able to house that a little more easily. And
Got it.
that's
So,
something that's
what?
in the works
Well,
right
good.
now.
Take us to what's in your facility right now, too, so the people who locally can do and want to come to Florida and have a vacation, right? So, take us to your facility right now. I know I'm going off task
Oh, it's
here, but I
okay.
want to know where you are or how
Um,
you.
so so right now I'm working out of my home. So it's
Okay.
luckily I have a very large living room that functions as like half seating area and then half classroom.
Perfect.
And then the second bedroom is set up as a healing room. So that's the room that we're in now. This is my little healing space.
It's beautiful.
So right now I have room for about, 10 to 12 people in a class.
Okay.
But we're kind of outgrowing that at this point. So that's why we just went and looked at our first property yesterday. It's not the one, but it was exciting to start that process.
Yes.
And we're moving into a commercial space to be able to expand even more so we can accommodate the growth,
I love it.
which
Well, if the
is very
timing
exciting.
works, you can also come to us, right? Because we're in my
Oh,
house when
yeah.
we do this stuff too. So, really cool. So, let's get back into healings that you do. I love everything you just said, by the way. I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to look at my calendar. You will see me soon. Um, Other types of modalities. So, right now, I seem to be attracting my problem, which is high anxiety, panic, shaking, people don't know, fear, mask,
Yeah.
vaccinations, right? Take us to the modalities that you would utilize right now to support the people who are experiencing that. And then, if hopefully there's something maybe that can be done online so the people listening could also take advantage of that. Can you take us there?
So, um, one of the ones that we use the most for people that are really experiencing the symptoms of our age, I'll say, is it's really a collection of a few different healings.
Okay.
Um, uh, Put them together, we kind of casually refer to it as a trifecta. But it's three main healings that, when done together, really produce a pretty powerful result.
Okay.
So the three parts of it are a negative energy removal, which is for energies that we're kind of that we pick up from outside sources or that we get blasted with from outside sources. So if you imagine that you're driving and someone thinks that you cut them off and they speed by and flip the bird and say some nasty words and just slime you with junk, or you get in an argument and someone yells some unkind things, or even maybe we get on our social media platform and get into a situation where the caps lock key is involved. Even if it's virtual, that energy is still being directed at
Totally
us and
agree.
can have effects. Or even someone that we love and care about that we're very close to might have a frustrating day and think, ugh, Charlie, for a few hours.
Hey, we're
It
not feeling
happens.
well, we're tired, right? And we're picking up because our
Yes.
immunity is down from not attracting it. So
Right.
everything you just said, trifecta, keep going.
Yeah.
So clearing the negative
So
energy.
yeah, so that's part one. It removes all that energy and sends it back where it came from. Not in a karma is going to get you kind of way, but in a here's some light, now please do something good with it kind of way.
Got it?
Part two is an emotional cord cutting. So every time that we have an interaction with another human on this planet, we create an emotional attachment that we call a cord. And if we have a nice little chat with the sweet little old lady in the grocery store checkout line, little thin wispy cord, no big deal, no issues there. But our family, our friends, our loved ones, our spouses, our partners, our coworkers, those cords stay around for a much longer time. They get much bigger and much thicker. And over the course of that time, a little anger here, a little frustration there, a misunderstanding, disappointment, all of this stuff builds up and gets caught up in those connections. So it can really affect our ability to relate to other people cleanly and clearly. And that's also when we can find ourselves seeing someone do something that would be, potentially noticeable and annoying. Like the example that I use is, somebody's like sitting next to you in a waiting room clicking a pen. we might notice that and we might think, oh, that's kind of an annoying thing to do. But if we're sitting there plotting ways to get away with murder because of it, then that's not the pen clicking. That's because of some attachment that we have. That's something else going on there that it's triggering, and then thinking, oh, that reminds me of this, which is that, and that, and that, and that. Like, and then all of a sudden we're fuming and boiling over a pen.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing this up too, because tomorrow I have a quick short coming out on my channel about energy cords tied to other people. And so let's just go to, like, you've divorced the narcissist ex-husband, or the wife who was a narcissist and, or abused you or whatever, right? And you are told to get away from them and you're doing it. Energetically, you're tied, right? So I remember once asking in a session for myself, in a healing session, what about my ex-husband and I? And the reader at the time was like, that life has not yet been determined. What you do in this life will alter and change that reality. And it just paused me so much in my life. And let me tell you, I've spent the last 15 years forgiving the ex and letting go and just loving and thank you for my daughter and all that, because I want the relationship in my next life to be light and not heavy. So I love that you've brought awareness to that. So another healing that you would do is helping those cords.
Yeah, because like you said, the ability to move
cord
forward.
Cutting? Is it cord cutting? Is that the term for it?
The full name is emotional cord cutting, but we usually just call it the cord cutting.
Perfect.
And most spiritual practices around the world over the course of time all have some form of cord cutting involved. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Sometimes you can do it on yourself. The only problem with cutting your own cords is that sometimes we're attached to our attachments. And it can be like, oh, I'm cutting that cord. I'm definitely cutting it. I'm cutting it right now. So it's helpful sometimes to have other people do it. Yeah. It's often helpful.
Can I say one more thing about that? I love the interaction back and forth too, because it's important that people know we're on two sides of this. I remember once going to an energy healer, and I thought I was done with this cord with this one particular person in my life. When the healer got around me, she was like, Jean, he's attached to you, right? So I was good. I didn't think but he was tethered to me because he hadn't done the work yet. So that was a whole other aspect of cord cutting, right? So we can be mindful and bring awareness, and we can be healing and doing all the work. Other people are throwing cords out at us. Do you agree, or does that work that way?
Yeah, it's definitely, we always, it's always a two-way street with a cord, right? There's always, it's always a two-person thing. Now we can have cords to things and places, but they're not usually as problematic as the cords to people. And they're much more common to be with people.
In my energy readings, one of the questions that I'll ask Source is, what is the cord that these two came in on? You know what I mean? So at the time, one was looking for this and that person filled that. And so there's an energy cord that attracts people too. So I love this whole conversation. Did you get to the third on that? 1, 2, are we on the third? Trifecta?
Yeah, so the third is called a purification by light, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is just getting sandblasted with a whole bunch of light to clear out anything else that might be hanging around. One of the things I really enjoy about the purification by light is I feel like it's a really good representation of the King Solomon lineage, kind of in a microcosm kind of way. Because in the lineage, we work with the teachings of Jesus, we work with the teachings of Buddha, we worked with the Egyptian energies, we work with the Greek energies, we work with Hindu, we work with it's all founded on Hermetics, so it's all metaphysics. But we work with nature and Druidism and Celtic shamanism. We work with angels and archangels and the higher stuff, and Enochi and things. It's again, in that time when he called everybody in, if it worked and they could prove that it worked, then it was taken into the lineage. So in the course of the purification by light, you will hear me speak 4 different languages. I'll be speaking English, I'll be speaking Hebrew, I'll be speaking Latin, and I'll be speaking Sanskrit. And so
seriously,
that to me just embodies the essence of this lineage in such a wonderful way, to show that we're pulling from all the different things, because I'm going to be calling on the power of Jesus Christ and then toning Mani Padme Hum. So, and working with Hebrew before and after and during. So it just brings in all of these energies to work together, because they're all on the planet and they're all available, and they're all different aspects of the same thing.
Oh, I could
So
spend all afternoon with you. This is so amazing. So I think we covered so much today. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the people watching,
oh,
they're like going,
yeah.
slow it down. I can't keep.
There's a
Phenomenal.
lot of meat in there.
I love this. What I'll do too is I'll take a lot of what you said and I'll add the slides and education stuff so people can take the pause and really hear all the beautiful things that you said today. So I have two more questions. So
Yes.
one question is, I love to spontaneously bring this onto people being interviewed so you're not prepared for it. Take us out 5 years for you and you're like, you're ideal, you're in the best experience you are because all your intentions for doing this work for others has been met. And so you're in that space. What are you doing?
Hmm.
Isn't that big?
So definitely at that point, be in a larger space so that I'll be able to hold larger classes. And my work, I've just begun doing work as a guide in the lineage, which is someone who can initiate others
Good.
through a class called Empower Thyself, and teaching that, and doing the initiations. So I would definitely be expanding that, and having lots of flow there with a thriving community of initiates and light workers around me, which is really what I'm trying to build and grow, is a community here. And I am always going to be a little bit of a gypsy at heart. So, and I love teaching. So I would be doing lots of traveling to different places to teach different classes, and and still keeping the center anchored here, but also flitting about and Mary Poppinsing, if you will.
I love it. Well, I
You
think
know,
I think hopefully people will see this, they'll feel drawn to you, and we can help you hopefully achieve that goal. So
well,
the
thank you.
last question before we head into rapid fire is, when you knew I was going to interview you and we talked in my garage 3 months ago and we were hoping, did we get to what you wanted to make sure got said today, or did I miss something?
I don't know. I think we did. I think we've covered some really good stuff. The big passion for me is making sure that people, one, know that these teachings are out there, and that they can help. If you have tried everything else, if you have looked under every other stone, if you have studied with every other thing that you can find, and you're just not quite finding the thing that is right for you, then come find me, and let me see if this might be that thing, because it was for me, and many of us who do this work, the reason we do it is because it was for us too.
I think
And
I think that's a good point. We're never we have our toolbox and we have what we know, and but if we're in that space of healing and channeling, we're following source, right? So it's never one thing. You might be in the modality of something, but it ends up being so much more. So you've said we a couple times. Is we a facility? Is it a group of people? Who's the we in your healing group?
I feel like the most recent times I've said it, I was referring to like all of those of us who study within the school and within this lineage,
Got it.
who've chosen to walk this particular path.
Got it. Got
Um,
it.
and we uh, will never claim that this is the only path. There are many wonderful and varied paths to all the awesome stuff we're trying to achieve. But for those of us who have chosen to walk this path, it's because we found that this was the best way for us.
Yeah, I love
And
that. And duly noted, there's a path either way. There's got to be a path, right? You get on it. Love it.
and it's also worth noting, we are also, for all intents and purposes, a school. So you can come and study and go. There's no commitments to anything. You can come in, take some classes, and train, receive some healings, and do some stuff, make your life a wonderful, better place, and then go off and along your merry way. It's all good.
I love it. Hey, you know what time it is?
Was
We're
this
sliding into rapid fire. So this is where I
awesome?
get to say thank you so much for taking time, for setting this up with me, for being patient as you had to go through my logs, right? And I really appreciate your time today, and I'm glad to know you. So we'll be seeing each other soon. Too. So quick one-word answers. They're really fun. The music's kicking up. What is your favorite movie?
The Birdcage.
Second person to answer that. You're going to change the world today. The world needs what in order to be changed?
It's hokey, but love.
What is your pet peeve?
When someone tells me I can't do something that I know I can.
Call that a challenge. I love that. Personal quality about yourself that you love.
One word answer is acceptance. Not for any particular reason, but one of my gifts is that I
love to, and it's not even that I choose to, it's just the way that I've always seen people is for who and what they are.
And not for who they could be or who they should be or all these different things. I mean, now I see a little bit more potential in people, but that's a little bit different.
I love that. Okay, and last thing is, what are you doing when you're experiencing joy?
Many things, but the ultimate one I'd have to say is dancing. I'm also a trained dancer, and that's what I've done in my other life, is work in musical theater and dance. And that is just, there are a few things that can touch that highest, purest form of joy and divine just awesomeness than being lost in the throes of movement and loving and living.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening today. So whether you've hung in there on HD Color through YouTube or you're listening on podcast, Charlie and I would like to thank you and also invite you. I'll put all your media links below, make a better connection, and explore your modality. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Have a good day, everyone.